are so excited that you are here watching this story and that you're here just checking it out. Before we begin, we want to invite you to interact with us on Twitter. Use the hashtag AskYourChurch. As you can tell, we have a different setup today because we just have an exciting story to tell you guys. So please follow up with us. Also, before we proceed, one of the things we always want to do is just pray and ask that God would just speak to our hearts. And through this story, I pray that you would get something out of it. So, babe, why don't you pray before we go into your awesome video of how you did last week. We're going to have a preview of last week's message, and then we'll go on with the rest of the series.
All right, so just wherever you are, if you want to close your eyes or bow your head, or if you just want to watch the screen, whatever works for you, we'll just go ahead and pray.
I already had my eyes closed. You took too long.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Jesus, thank you so much for this morning. God, I thank you, Lord, for this beautiful story that you've given us. God, I pray that you would be able to touch so many people. I ask you, Lord, to open up our hearts, God, and just prepare us to receive something from you. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Awesome. Watch this video.
Previously on Your Church.
There's this word, this thing that can come into our lives called bitterness. Are you stopping life from happening around you? Is there anything going on around you? Opportunities, people, friends, that we stop it? We're supposed to have joy living inside of us. If we do not have joy, if we do not have life, there is something inside of us that is holding us back from having that vibrant relationship with Jesus Christ. Sometimes we have to go out and find life. Stuff maybe gets stolen from us in life, and it's not God's fault. God doesn't purpose for us to have things stolen from us in life. But what he can do is he can take the bad that has happened inside of your life and turn it for good. He can turn it into the biggest blessing that you've ever seen before in your life.
Welcome back to our live stream. We brought our oldest son, or our only son, Isaac, to hang out with us today. So he'll be here chilling a little bit. So why don't you say hi? Why don't you introduce yourself? Hey. So I want to warn you that pretty much our whole house has had the cough, all of October, it seems.
Yeah.
So if we're coughing our lungs out, we're sorry about that. We'll try to cough away from the mic. But we're here to share with you guys one of the most challenging events that we have gone through in our life. The name of the series that we're on is Are You Okay? And we're connecting with those, and we're trying to bring healing and answers and direction to those that have gone through or are going through a tragic moment in their life, a moment of brokenness in their life, deep depression in their life. A lot of times the church, we just overlook it. We just want to cover up. We just want to cover it up with just a simple answer and just say pray more, or read more, or just have faith. And I think it would help for you to have an insight into our story and the things that we went through in our life, and you also get to meet our other daughter, who the story is about. And so this all started the day we found out that we were pregnant with our daughter. How'd that go?
So we had found out, we were up in Tulsa for our anniversary, and we found out.
That's when you usually get pregnant.
Well, and so we found out that we were pregnant, and we were so excited. We were expecting, this journey, and our son was about 18 months old at the time. And so we were like, this is such a perfect timing to get pregnant and, have our next kid and stuff. And so we were really excited. And right before we were going to be telling our families and stuff, we had all the symptoms of having a miscarriage, which, we were having a really hard time with and stuff. And it was real heavy. And so we had to
let our families know that, like, instead of that we were going to be having a baby, that we might be having a miscarriage. And you know, it's funny because looking back now, you know, we went and spoke with the geneticist and stuff, and my body was actually at that point. London had, you know, so many things kind of going on with her that my body was trying to kind of like flush her out. But our little daughter is quite the fighter, and so instead of she's quite what?
She's quite the hugger.
And she's quite the hugger, yes. And so instead of letting my body flush her out, she held on and she didn't let go, and she somehow made it through that whole process. And so we went on with the pregnancy.
And we thought, okay, great. We went through the worst of it. Okay, that was like, you know, we prayed and she cried and I'm there holding her. And, you know, miscarriages like that happen pretty often, you know, but I was just believing in God that it was in God's hands. And it turned out, you know, that we still had the baby. And we were expecting everything to be perfect from then on, because my son's birth and delivery was flawless. It was flawless. He just like a stork brought him. He fell from heaven. It was awesome. But actually, my wife's mother, who is a doctor, OBGYN, delivered the baby in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it was a great delivery. So we were expecting just perfect sailing from then on.
Same thing with London.
I was a youth and young adult pastor, and you know, we both were, and we were just not expecting any more surprises. And then about seven months into it, we went for a regular checkup, and you know, they measure the baby's head and size and all that stuff. And one of the things that they said, yeah. Okay, why don't you go back over there? Stay over there. And one of the things that they found out during this routine checkup is that she wasn't growing.
Yeah.
That she had stopped growing at a certain age. How many weeks was it?
Well, she was 4 months behind.
4 months
in her
behind. And it was
birth. I mean, 4 months. I'm sorry.
4 weeks.
4 weeks.
Yeah, she was 4 weeks. I was
is
like
way
4
too long.
months. That changes the story a little
That
bit.
changes it.
But anyways, you could document
weeks.
all this and find this all stuff out. But she was 4 weeks behind. And so, you know, they couldn't tell us why. So we went to Houston for just a checkup. Just tell us why, you know, maybe she's going to be small. I mean, you know, she's a little girl. She's going to be cute, you know. But we just, you know, we weren't thinking anything of it. You know, we just thought measurements were wrong. So we go to Houston. And our world, who knew what was waiting for us in Houston? The doctors tell us that your daughter has a golf-sized tumor in her lower left lung. And I'm talking, I mean, she's tiny already, so that tumor is like a huge percentage of her body. And you know, and on
Might
top,
need immediate surgery.
yeah, if she's born, she's not gonna be able to breathe well. She's gonna need immediate surgery. So we're both like, you know, you don't want to hear that stuff, you know. So we're both freaking out. We're both trying to, you know, all right, well, we'll get through this, and you know, we're trying to, just get a grasp on the situation. So we're planning on going back home, and then we get some more news. The doctor tells us, okay, well, I need to do more tests on your wife. So because we saw something, it's like the worst thing you want to tell anybody.
What?
We saw something, and we just need to do more tests. And I'm like, what did you see? Just tell me. Quit beating around the bush. So they take Sarah away. Good thing I was with my mom, because every thought imaginable was going through my mind. I'm like, you know, I love my wife and all this stuff, and what are we gonna do? And you know, all these thoughts, and finally the doctor comes back, and he tells me, what we saw is that your wife looks like she's about to have this baby. I was like, really? You know, we're like, okay, well, he's like, so you all can't leave. Listen, you all can't leave Houston, because if you have the baby, even if the idea was, even if we went like 4 hours, a 4-hour drive, or even on an airplane, that the baby was going to be born at any moment. And if the baby was born anywhere else where there was an advanced medical facility that was going to perform like neonatal microscopic surgery to remove the tumor, it was going to be life-threatening, that she needed to stay in Houston and until she was ready to be born.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'll let you tell what happened next.
And so we're like in the hospital, just like waiting basically to just have this baby, because they were just like, you know, she's so little and you've already had another baby. So, I mean, you could practically sneeze this baby out. She'd just fall right out. And we were just kind of like, okay. So, and they put me on bed rest, which if you know my personality very well, that doesn't work very well. I kept on like trying to get up and they had to keep making me like, okay, Sarah, you need to sit back down.
They strapped her on the bed.
They strapped me down.
No, I'm just kidding.
No straps, but they did make me stay down. And and so we do this like these little checkup things where they would do like this test with the sonogram, and they would, you know, make sure that she was practicing her breathing. They would make sure she was moving, like all this stuff and everything. She was doing pretty good. She always had this funny little thing about London is I had like all this extra fluid from the genetic disorder and stuff that was going on. There was all this like extra fluid in my belly and stuff. So, and she was so little that she made it like her own little swimming pool. So she would just like bounce like everywhere. And every single time they would try to get her heart rate, like they couldn't get it because she would just be bouncing over to like whatever side like was opposite of where the monitors were. So they were monitoring her. And so my London was so active and so hyper and all this stuff. And one morning they took me down. Carlos was still in the room. And they took me down, and they went to go do the testing. And I looked over and I looked at the monitor, and I saw London just laying there, and I was like, something doesn't feel right. And she starts like poking at her, like at my belly, trying to get her to move. She kind of moved just a little bit, and I'll never forget like that turn that she made in my womb, and I just saw her like laying on her side, and she didn't continue moving after that. And she starts making calls to the doctor and stuff, and my everything starts moving into like that slow motion of just like, I don't know what's happening here, but something's just not right and stuff. And so we go back up to the room, and they have me on the monitors and stuff, and I get Carlos, and you know, I'm like, okay, you guys, I understand that you're trying to make things all quiet for me because you're trying to make sure I don't freak out, but you're gonna make me freak out if you don't tell me what's going on, you know, stuff. So they're like, your baby's heart rate is slowing down like drastically and stuff. We're gonna have to go ahead and take you into labor and delivery. So we go in, and you know, we're going through this whole process, and we actually had family with us like not that long before. But, you know, London seemed to be taking longer and stuff. So at that moment, it was just, you know, Carlos and I, and we're there, and London's heart rate. I mean, I'll never forget the sound of it because she had, they had like the speakers up like so loud.
They wanted to track every heartbeat. So she was kind of like hooked up to speakers and the microphone, and the whole hospital, the whole like unit there could hear London's heartbeat. And a baby's heartbeat is pretty fast. It's like doom, 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 right?
Yeah.
And when it slows down, it was very, evident. It was just doom, doom. And so we're here, and her heart had dipped a couple of times, but every time the doctors came in, it would kind of pick back up.
Yeah.
And this time, her heart dipped, and the doctors didn't come in because they were, I guess, waiting to see how long. And to finally, like a minute into it, the room was filled.
Just rushed.
And was just filled with doctors, filled with surgeons. They took Sarah out of the room. They told me to wait there. I'm like, yeah, right, I'm gonna wait here. And so I'm following them, and they take her to the surgery room, and they block me, and so I'm kind of trying to find another area, and you know, I'm peeking through the blinds, and it was a very hard moment for me because I am my wife's. I like to be there whenever she's going. I mean, I've been by her side through every hardship, and it was crazy because I know she was fully awake, and the doctors are in there, and she couldn't hold my hand, she couldn't see me, and she's in there. I mean, what was going through your mind when you're in that surgery room knowing something's about to happen? I mean, you have white lights everywhere.
Yeah, so I'm in there, and like you said, there's these, you know, big lights everywhere and stuff. There's like people all around and stuff, and And I remember laying there, like, kind of trying to, like, just stay really, like, calm. And all of a sudden, like, they pinched my tummy to make sure that everything was numb. And I'm like, ow. And they're like, sorry. So then they're like, the epidural is not working. You know, she still, like, can feel it. I apologize. Isaac, hold on. And so they pinch, and, you know, I'm feeling it, and they're just like, she can feel it, the epidural's not working. And then I all of a sudden hear all these different voices going on around me and stuff, and, like, the doctors and the nurses are yelling towards each other, and they're like, you know, like, well, we need to do it now. Her heart rate has been down for 8 to 9 minutes. We need to start this surgery. And they're like, but the epidural hasn't worked yet. And they're like, I'm trying to knock her out. She's not knocked out yet. And stuff. And they're like, all this stuff is going on. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, what the heck is happening? Like, I can't get knocked out. And then they put the little cup thing over your mouth. And then I just hear the, and then all of a sudden I'm just out, you know. And then I wake up not having the slightest clue. I went into this panic attack because, and I'm breathing super hard and stuff, because I had woken up not knowing whether I was going to have a baby.
I was there when you woke up, right?
No, you right after.
Right
in the
after?
room. They brought me into that recovery room, and that's when you were there and stuff. But
Well, when I got there, you were still freaking out.
yeah, I freaked out for a little while.
Yeah.
It's kind of a freak out if you have no idea
Yeah.
whether your
If
baby
you've-
has survived
well,
or not.
it's actually part of just the anesthesia process. Whenever they wake you, whenever you get knocked out and you wake up, I think it's like a rush of all that experience, and you're just like, you know, everyone handles it differently. I know when I had surgery before and that happened to me, I woke up super mad. I was screaming at people. It's just part of that experience. But so I'm looking through the blinds, and I see them just make a huge cut and just take out the baby, you know, right away. And I'm holding my daughter. Once they took her into that room, I'm holding my daughter, and a couple of thoughts are going through my head. Number one is the fact that my wife's not there, but number two, I'm looking and I'm holding a fighter. I'm holding a survivor. I'm holding my London, and she has gone through such a beating. And not only now is she born, but now she's gonna go through surgery again. And I'm just holding her. And as a father, I'm just looking at her with these eyes of love and just wanting to say, baby, I'm gonna take it all away. It's gonna be taken all away. And I'm holding her there, and I just don't wanna let her go, but I have to, so they can take her to pretty much like a infant ICU unit. And they take her there. And keep in mind, we're stuck in Houston. And we're there for about 3 months. So I'll kind of speed through this part because this is not even like the story, you know. But let's speed up to the very end of our Houston experience, which we had to stay there so that London could eat a little more, you know.
Have her surgery.
Take out the tumor. So finally we're like, okay, it's done. We're going back home. And we're gonna start life again. You know, I'm like, all right, we got through this. Let's go back to some normalcy. And we go back home, and we start noticing that even small things are just not right.
Yeah.
Her fists are always clenched. She was
like this all the time.
Yeah, she's still very small. She has trouble eating from a bottle. It's just, you know, she'll cry, and we're shocked because our son, he came with an instruction manual. He came just ready for anything. You know, you gave him food, and he ate in like 5 minutes. You know, he knew, you know, algebra when he was born. And so our daughter it was a struggle, and we couldn't know why until this one day, Sarah's at a friend's house, and they see that London is turning, her skin is turning into another shade. It's like a shade of blue, and it's like, you know, kind of when you hold your breath or when you're just suffocated and you're just turned blue. And so we're there, and so Sarah's freaking out. Sarah takes London to the hospital where we were living, which was not a huge advanced hospital, and they don't know what's going on. So they just say, okay, it was pneumonia or whatever. So we take London back home. She starts turning blue again.
Well, no,
Why didn't
she
you
stayed
say
at the
it?
hospital. Sorry. So they were trying to figure things out and stuff, and we had realized that it had been a seizure, and she ended up having to get life flighted up to San Antonio, and which you could only fit one other person in there. So I had to go with London, and then Carlos had Isaac and drove him up and stuff. But I'm up there in the ICU unit up there, the PICU, and we're in the emergency room and stuff, and we're trying to figure out what's going on and stuff. And they do like a CT scan, and they come back in and they're like, so how often is your daughter having these seizures? Which we hadn't actually like for sure made it like, okay, this is a seizure. And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, she doesn't have seizures. And they were like, are you sure? Does she ever do this or this? And she's like asking me all these questions. And I was like, well, yeah, but I mean, I didn't. And she was like, pretty much there's no way that was her first seizure. There's a lot of things we saw in the CT scan. And I'm like, wait, like, and
Yeah, they were tracking brain activity, and they saw that it was crazy going on.
it was all crazy. And, you know, as a mom, you're just like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, my daughter's having seizures, like, constantly, like, there's something wrong. And she was like, you know, I can't really say anymore, which is like the worst thing you can say. But she's like, I can't really say anymore. I'm going to have the neurologist come in tomorrow. So we have this long night, sleeping up in a chair, trying to wait for this neurologist to come. And meanwhile, Carlos and Isaac get there and stuff. And then
So we get to the hospital, and you know, the neurologist is not there yet. So I tell Sarah, hey, I have some family or some friends that live here that they are like family. They're really close to us. Why don't you go? They invited us to stay at their house, you know, during this time. Go shower. I mean, Sarah had been there for a couple of days, or it just seemed forever. She was just so beat up by just that hospital experience. And so she goes, and while she's out there, the neurologist comes. And I'm like, my wife's not here. But he comes and he starts telling me that your daughter has a deformed brain. Pretty much her brain doesn't have any wrinkles, which I'm like, all right, that's cool. Like, do we even need wrinkles? You know, like, who needs wrinkles
Who
anyway?
needs wrinkles?
He's like, well, you know, wrinkles are a sign of a complete brain development. And without wrinkles, that means really her brain developed halfway and it just stopped. And it's just smooth. And he says what she has is something called lissencephaly, which later on we find out it's a certain type of lissencephaly called Miller-Dieker lissencephaly. It's a mouthful, so we have it up here for you guys if you want to Wikipedia it. But he's explaining to me everything, and he's pretty much saying your daughter will never walk, she will never talk, she won't even be able to eat. She, you know, depends how severe it is. She might not have a long life expectancy. And I'm just there. I'm just thinking, all right, I can't wait for this guy to leave so that I can take control of it and I can do the research. I can find cures. I can pray. We're gonna get through this and it's gonna get done. And it was just a huge mistake. But I'm like, okay, well, I need to call my wife and tell her everything that this guy told me. So Sarah had just gotten there to our friend's house, and I call her.
Hadn't gotten out of the car yet.
And she hadn't gotten out of the car yet, and she starts asking me all these questions. And I mean, did you at that point? Because I hadn't accepted it yet. Mm-hmm. I hadn't realized that it was true yet. Mm-hmm. I guess you knew that they were saying what was true, or what was going through your mind at that point.
I mean, being there, I mean, I knew there was something wrong. I knew that there was something more than just what we saw with, you know, not knowing the whole medical side of things and stuff. And I knew that, you know, that she had, you know, that big seizure and stuff. And I knew that you know, I mean, she was 8 months old and she still couldn't pick up her head. She still wasn't reaching out for a toy. She still couldn't eat. Like, nothing was working right. So I knew there was something wrong, you know. And so whenever he told me, like, it was kind of like this, I knew there was something wrong, but I wasn't expecting this. This was not a part of
Our plan.
our plan. You know, we had a plan, having, you know, some kids and, you know, just, you know, being pastors and just, you know, raising them and just going out and doing a bunch of fun stuff and planning weddings.
Yeah, and the thing too is that my wife always wanted our daughter to be part of the worship team and to sing and to be very active. And I always imagine, you know, me walking her down the aisle and doing the daddy-daughter dance and, you know, teaching her and you know, stalking her on prom dates, you know, and just guarding my daughter and going on daddy dates. And I think the worst part about when something tragic happens is that it just messes your expectation. When you lose someone that you love, it just, wait, it was not supposed to be that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part about, you know, life, is that life is not, it's not just planned out and into it's not a perfect plan. Life doesn't just pan out the way you want it to pan out.
Yeah.
You know, you wanted to have a long, happy life, but you start dealing with depression and you start being insecure about yourself, and that leads you down a spiral and you get in a dark place, you know, or you get sick, or the doctor gives you a bad report, or, you know, something happens to your mom, to your dad, to your kids, to yourself, and you get you know, and all of a sudden life is like, wait, this is not how it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, the thing with that is when life gets out of control, when things happen that are out of your control, all you can think of and all you can lean on is that, well, God is still in control.
Yeah.
God has not lost control of the situation. So if God is still in control, then that means that God can bring completion. God can bring peace to our chaos. Eventually, the storm is the waves are going to calm down. The craziness of the situation is going to be still. And how are we going to look like afterwards?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people expect that at this moment, we're going to get instant gratification, instant healing, instant just, okay. And you got to think, okay, what's it going to look like and what's it going to be like when the storm calms down? And so I tell Sarah the news. She starts crying in the car. I call, you know, and I'm just there still in denial. And I'm just there and I call my family friends and I'm like, hey, Sarah is in your driveway. Can you please go out and just get her? She's not going to go inside. We just got horrible news. Can you just please, you know, take my wife in? And so we brought London back, you know, home. We had to stay in San Antonio for another month. So we ended up staying in San Antonio. Again, we've always stuck in cities. We got stuck in Houston. Now we're stuck in San Antonio, and we're there. And the part that hit me the most, where I guess it was a reality check, was that moment when Sarah tells me that London is going to need surgery. They have to install pretty much a feeding tube into her stomach because London has been choking. The doctors are like, have you noticed that your daughter coughs? Yeah? Have you noticed that she coughs while she eats during the day, during the night? We're like, yeah, that's normal. Who doesn't cough? We're like, well, it's because she's been choking on her own liquid. And her brain doesn't tell her body to close the valve that keeps liquid from going into the lungs. So liquid has been getting to her lungs, so she cannot eat through her mouth anymore. She's going to have a feeding tube that goes straight to her stomach. And I'm still not believing it. I told Sarah, just keep feeding her. Don't
like,
just...
We can't just keep feeding her,
I'm like,
Carlos.
no. Just, you know, like once we get to surgery, then stuff starts getting real. I'm like, just keep doing what we're doing. And Sarah's like, no, we can't. And I'm just like, you know, we got to do the surgery. And when she tells me the surgery is scheduled on this date, it's going to happen. You weren't there with me, but my parents had come and we were about to go eat. And I just didn't want to be with anybody. I'm in the car and I just break down because at that point, what the neurologist said was real. at that point, and it affirmed everything else that I had read, and that is that kids that have this diagnosis or have this brain deformation, especially Miller-Dieker encephaly, don't live past the age of 2 years old. I mean, you're reading this stuff for the first time.
Yeah.
And you're seeing pictures and you're like, oh my gosh, this was not how I saw things. How and my daughter's not gonna live past the age of 2, and it just hit me, and
While we're talking about it, let's throw a quick picture of London.
so here's a picture of London, so you can see
her.
what she looks like now, and in her beauty, in all her beauty and in all her color. And by the way, if you're wanting to tweet us some questions, go ahead and tweet us some questions at Ask Your Church, and we'd love to take a minute or two to answer some of those questions.
Yeah, I have my phone over here, so if you do hashtag at your church, we can answer some of your questions.
And so the expectation of the reality threw us off. And I remember feeling like that dream that I had of having a daddy's girl was shattered. I always dreamed of having a little daddy's girl, and it was shattered. And I went home, and we went to our friend's house, and Sarah's like, hey, we need diapers and wipes. We need a couple of things. So I went to Target. And when I'm at Target, I just get this sense of like, no, she is still going to be my princess.
Yeah.
She's still going to be daddy's girl. No matter what anybody says, she is going to be our little diva. She's going to be the queen of the home. And I bought a bunch of dresses, like all the cutest dresses that Target had that day. I mean, I went bankrupt on baby girl dresses. I'm like, ooh, I love this. And I was by myself. So I came home, I'm like, all right, here's your stuff. And she's like, what's all that stuff? I'm like, dresses for my little girl. I'm like, I don't care what she goes through in life. She's going to be dressed to impress. She's going to be my little princess. And so as we conclude, do we have any questions?
Let's check and see here.
So someone asked how old, how did you deal with the hard moments that made you just want to break down along the way? We broke down.
Yes. Okay. So, a lot of times in life, whenever we'll see people that are kind of going through hardships and stuff, and we're like, oh, like, man, they just hold themselves together so well, and like all this stuff, and that it means that you're working with it and stuff, but that doesn't mean that you've never broke down. And so Carlos and I have had plenty of times in our journey with our beautiful princess, who we're actually going to bring out here in just a minute. We did have our breakdown moments, both of us. There's been a lot of times and stuff where, London's in ICU, and we'll be there. And I remember that we've gotten so many conversations from the doctors of, like, how far do you want us to go to keep her alive right now? So many of okay, this is probably the end and stuff. And I remember the first time that we had that was, Carlos had went out to England to go do some stuff out there, and he came back after like a month, and we were like, you know what, we've been apart from each other for a month, let's go on a date, just a real quick, short little just dinner, and we'll just be right back. And all the doctors and nurses are like, yes, like, you've been here all month, because London had been in the hospital for a month, and so we're like, let's just go out real quick. And so we order our food, and our food gets in front of us, and we get a call like, you guys need to get back here right away. We're like, oh my gosh. And we get over there and stuff, and London had this like freak out with like her body temperature, because since her brain doesn't quite work right, sometimes it doesn't regulate its body temperature, and she started going so low that she had completely turned white all the way down to her lips. Her pupils had already lost all response. You put a light in front of it, and the pupils didn't even move a little bit and stuff. And we had our first moment in time, of how far do you want us to go? And when you start having those conversations with doctors, and that wasn't the last time that that's even happened, you know. So
Yeah,
when
how
you
far
start,
do you want us to go to save your child? You
it's
know,
yeah, it's hard to not just, you know, break down and stuff. But one of the things that I've just seen, you know, in my life and through my journey with things and stuff is that, like, life happens. There's stuff that happens in life where it's not the way that we wanted to go. We never planned on having a daughter that we would have to be sitting in the ICU wondering if she's going to survive, or being told that she's not going to make it past 2, or, you know, that was never a part of our plan. And, you know, but stuff happens. God doesn't intend things to happen, but the world is what the world is right now and stuff. But what I've learned is that no matter how bad things get, God can always turn things around. He can always do stuff to bring life into our situations. And with London, you know, although it's been a hard journey, I couldn't even tell you and explain to you how much life this beautiful little girl, and in fact, let me bring her out so that you can see the beautiful little life that God has brought into the Diaz home. And so this is London, and she is our little shining star. And you know, people have asked, you know, several times stuff like, how do you deal with it? How do you do it and stuff? And the truth is, and I know that Carlos would agree with me, is that this has been one of the most beautiful gifts that we have ever received in our entire life. You know, through every hardship, through everything, she has so much personality. She has so much life inside of her. And our family, you know, instead of, you know, getting down about it all the time, or getting depressed about it and stuff, we have chosen to see the life that is inside of her, and that life has been brought into our home.
I can't even tell you how many times London has ministered and has healed me. When I am going through stuff, I just hold her for hours, and just her life and her love towards me and our love towards one another, it just speaks to me. And I just feel like there's something that radiates from her that brings a light into our home, brings life into our home, which is something you don't see with a lot of kids. And that is because I feel the parents have extinguished that light, have just accepted the darkness. But we've decided, and we're going to end with this, 2 things. We decided that either, when all this was going on, I feel like this was, as me as a leader of the home, I had to do 2 things. Either one, our life was going to revolve around our daughter with special needs. That means everything that we did from now on was going to be about taking care of our daughter, giving her the best life, doing all this stuff. And my son's focus, everyone was going to be, the focus was on her. Where we can't go out because of London. We can't do things because of London, you know, where it's because of her. Or we could say, you know what, how about we just bring her along with us on the journey that God has us on.
Yeah.
Let's keep going after God, going after the visions, going after the things, the calling that God has placed in our life, and let's just keep moving forward, and let's bring our kids with us.
Yeah.
Because when we both feel fulfilled, our kids are going to be fulfilled. Our kids are going to be happy. And so we decided to keep moving forward. And so this is one of the things that, you know, London does. You know, she just, you know, some liquid kind of lingers around the lung area, and so she coughs. But you okay? You okay? She's smiling. And our kids are both so full of life, so full of joy, because we decided that no matter what, we're going to keep going after the calling of God, going after the purpose of God,
Yes.
taking our kids with us. Let them experience life. Let them experience everything that God has done for us, that God is doing through us. But today was part one, talking about the story. Next week, we're going to go a little bit more in depth with the things that God spoke to us individually,
Yeah.
together, the moment that we cried together. And so we encourage you to invite someone. Keep tweeting us your questions. We'll tweet back as to how you and others can find healing along the way. So as we end, we have some music for you guys to listen to and pray with. Feel free to email us, contact us. Click on that Know Jesus button if you feel that God is just tugging at your heart. God bless you, and we look forward to next week.